We give a Patreon poll.
Patreon.com/CU podcast. You go, you pay, you get. We do weekly writings. I'll probably have one of those up by tomorrow. We do, you get the full video podcast. You get bonus podcast bits every week.
We talked about horrible pizza today.
We talked about horrible pizza today. We did. We went over the regional pizzas that are causing us stress and consternation.
That should be outlawed.
What else do you get? You get to vote in these poll topics, and you get hangouts.
In second place, hardest NES boss fights. Got shellacked, 19%, 81%. Since the start of the podcast, what retro game trend has surprised us the most?
I think the thing that surprised me the most over the past few years has been the, and I say this with an asterisk because it probably shouldn't have surprised me, but the rise of sealed game selling and collecting in the retro market, specifically the Nintendo market, kind of caught me by surprise. More to the point, the focus on minor differences between releases of games, like
print runs,
misspellings,
Rev A, oval, like a solid seal versus clear seal, all that stuff.
I was surprised to see that that stuff ended up taking precedence and also commanding more dollar value than truly rare entries. Some of those rarer games, like I always bring up, say, Supercars. Sure, not everyone's going to be excited about that, but the fact that things like a certain print run of Mario now command more attention than things like the NWC Championship carts blows my mind. I never really thought that we would get to that point.
Well, we get to look at who the people are buying this.
Yes, but still, I didn't think we would get to that point. And I probably should have thought we would get to that point because it happens with everything. And the way Nintendo collecting was going, this was kind of like the last way for people who had already spent a lot of money in Nintendo stuff to kind of keep, I feel like, the interest in Nintendo going. The original Nintendo, the NES. And the pandemic played some role in that and keeping it popular. But in terms of popularity, the Nintendo had the original Nintendo Entertainment System had already seen its time in the sun and had kind of worked through its natural course of progression and was on the downturn. And now it's still in the news because of the sealed collectors, but also because people were just playing whatever they had lying around during the pandemic. But yeah, that's really weird to me. And like I said, the biggest thing is how we focus on these minor differences as a way to make No, but a lot of people do focus on the minor differences between runs as a way to bring value, I guess, to these otherwise massively produced and released items.
I think, again, when you say a lot of people, it's not a lot of. I always say, like, this is not a lot of people. Like, this is a small group of people. It is
enough people to get the news out there. And have it discussed and generate money.
They got the news out there because it was a plan. I mean,
sure.
We've obviously established this. It was all planned out. Like, it was all, I mean, Carl Jobs did 3 hours of videos on it almost. We've talked about it for hours on length over the years. They had a plan. They actually, honestly, they bought up this stuff in the run up, since some of them knew about it, or some of the players had this stuff in their collections already.
So that's what I'm saying.
They could have done this with anything.
That was the way to keep their investment already. Yeah. That was the way to keep an investment that was falling out of fashion. It was a way to breathe new life into it.
Well, it wasn't. Well, it was not just breathing new life. It's now that they can make millions off of this stuff they couldn't before.
Yes.
New life. It was shot it to the moon, as the crypto bros say. That's what they did. It was. They could have conceived this in another collectibles market, but this was the only one untapped to that extent. This is the only one where they could do it because. It's like whenever you see people talk about this, it's like, the potential. I think these games are undervalued. Which when I say, how is something undervalued? By definition, it's worth what someone's going to pay for it. That's right. What the value is.
Value can change over time, but just because the value of something changes over time doesn't mean it was undervalued 10 years ago. That's what it was.
That's the value of it. That's the natural progression of where it's gone up and down. That's the value of the object. Until you bring in these collectors that A lot of them didn't collect games before, didn't know game collecting was a thing, and now asking if they want to buy my NWC carts. And it's like, did you know that was a thing like 3 years ago or 4 years ago? Did you know that those existed?
Right.
Or now you're learning about them as a new hot item. Now it's all the FOMO. So like, that's what I mean. It's a smaller group of people. But okay, yeah, that surprised me. But then when you look at all the nefarious things that had happened, it's like, well, you couldn't have expected that. I didn't expect it would be like that. Sure. I really did. But obviously, once you saw like the Pawn Stars appearance, you found out. We found out early on. We saw, hey, Jim Halpern bought that Mario. That he was part of the people that bought that Mario, part of the group that then put that on Pawn Stars. Something's up. And that's when we were asking the tough questions about that. Why is the grading company valuing the cart? Like, that's ridiculous. And then so we were kind of on that pretty early with that stuff. But that said, that didn't surprise me the most. I think it surprised me how much it went from the past 8 years where retro games was a lot more niche to now you have NES Classic, Super Nintendo Classic, Genesis Classic, PlayStation Classic, a lot more of these mainstream retro game re-releases that sold millions of them. And then on top of that, you have, Microsoft doing their own, Rare Replay thing. You have the big companies, not just the smaller ones doing their re-releases. The big companies getting.
You can also lump the mini arcade cabinets into this too.
Sure. But in terms of the scale, though, like the large companies like Nintendo doing it, Sony doing their own mini console. And then following it up with, the Switch Online service. And then, like, really, there was this gap in time where, like, it seemed like there wasn't attention paid anymore. It seemed like to the stuff from like the 80s and 90s. It was just a gap to me. And a lot's happened the past 5 years where now it's become, I'd say 2016 is probably the day or the year where it's like, now it's getting back into people's attention again. It's also the past 5 years, we've had a ton more, talk about all the video game documentaries that pop up every other month now.
Right.
Past 5 years, that's happened a lot. So it seems like we've aged enough where we're now the decision makers. We're now the ones in control of, we should be spotlighting the stuff that we grew up with. We should be making these products again, because 10 years ago that you would never have saw an NES Classic. It was like, who would have bought it 10 years ago? Like,
yeah, no, that's a good point. I mean, we have seen support for retro libraries in some ways, in ways that I never could have imagined in 2005, I guess.
Yeah, I always thought it would just be weirdos like us that just liked all those old games and had the original hardware. I didn't think it would blow up to the point where people are now demanding certain games on the Switch Online. Like, I demand to see Earthbound. I like. There's been ways to play them forever, but I guess now it's just, I don't know. It's strange to see that.
Yeah,
it's strange.
Nah.
A lot of these games were just niche games forever, and you can play them anyway on emulators. So it seems like it's taken back over into now they're commercial products again.
It's interesting to see some of these products that have come out too that cater to the hardcore retro gamer that have taken off too. I never would have thought, 10 years ago that something like the Analog Pocket would have the demand that it does.
Oh yeah, 10 years ago. I mean, 10 years ago, Analog, they were doing Neo Geo stuff.
Yeah. Right.
Like in 10 years, their whole business has been flipped upside down. They started with the NT, which I remember was cannibalized Famicom boards, and then the Mini, and then they were taken off from there. But yeah, at first it was just like, we're catering to this really niche Neo Geo market at first, and now it's like their products. I don't know how many units they sell, but obviously it's a lot for the business to make a new product every year. So I mean, they weren't selling that many Neo Geo joysticks compared to what they're selling now.
Right. Yeah.
They just weren't. And then the fact that we've been more accepted, like the handheld revival, I don't think I would have saw that coming. I just don't think I would have saw that like everything now is a handheld or leaning into being a handheld from the Steam Deck, and the Switch is a handheld.
Steam Deck, Switch, Playdate, Analog Pocket. I mean, 4 of the hottest tech items for games in the past couple of years are all portables. I actually canceled my Steam Deck yesterday Not because I don't think it's a cool idea, but because my need for it is just kind of reduced since I upgraded my laptop. I don't really need I don't need a replacement to my computer.
I was on the fence, but then I said to myself, how much would I actually use this? Even if I had time to game a lot on the PC, at what point would I want to play some of these first-person shooters on a handheld versus with a mouse? You know what I mean? A mouse and keyboard. I just was thinking about, I'm like, it's not going to be a lot of scenarios to me.
I like it, and I could see myself with one in the future, but in July when I pre-ordered it, it was going to be a replacement for my last laptop in terms of gaming. Mm-hmm. I had not taken the new job yet. I got the new job. I had a good reason to upgrade my laptop, and suddenly I've got a gaming laptop. So I just don't need it anymore. But I think it's cool. I think it is cool.
Oh yeah, it's great. Like I said, like it's undervalued. It's underpriced versus what you get. The components in it
Undervalued.
They're losing money on them.
You're undervalued.
That was part of the appeal. Is like, wow, I could take this to conventions and this would be a powerful computer. I could like render videos off this if I'm, Then I was like, I'm not going to use this that much. I would use a tablet a lot more. So I'm looking, I don't have an iPad. For some reason, I don't have an iPad. And that's the only thing I'm into the ecosystem. I have a MacBook Air, but I use Windows on it. I hate the OS, Mac OS for computers, but I love it.
Great on a phone.
It's great on a phone.
Awful for
because
computers.
You don't want a phone to have a complex OS like the Android phones. I'm like, what the fuck am I doing?
And you don't want to be in a walled garden on your laptop.
Yes. So they got it flipped there. So yeah, the only thing I like about, as an aside, the only thing I like about Apple phones is that your phone's memory is tied to the fucking board. So if I drop it into the sink or the fucking hot tub, it goes
really?
out.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, that's what's bad about those. That's why I like the one good thing I wish an iPhone had was SD cards. I get it, but they don't want their phones to be hacked. It's a security thing.
Right.
I totally get that. As an aside, though. So yeah, that's what surprised me. I didn't think retro gaming would come quote unquote mainstream. All these products coming out, all the handheld stuff, and the sealed game stuff has been wacky. But again, could be, like you said, also part of everything's wacky during the pandemic. Maybe sealed games is their version of NFTs. Well, it is pump and dump and creator fool theory. It is. So it's the same. It's the same mentality behind getting people involved.
Yeah, you got to get more people in under you to raise your amount, and eventually
you exit.
Yeah,
and they're stuck with the bag.